Welcome to Upstream Downstream, a lively civil discussion devoted to the political, policy, and cultural topics that often divide us. Upstream Downstream is presented by the Stubblefield Institute for Civil Political Communications at Shepherd University in cooperation with WSHC-FM. Here's your host, David Welch.
Many Americans are proud to be part of such a diverse country. But with a wide range of backgrounds, we often come to the table with a wide range of divergent viewpoints. Here to talk with us about how to be a leader in a growingly divergent world is Dr. Chiquita Howard-Bostic. She is the Associate Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity at Shepherd University. She is also the Chair of the Department of Sociology, Criminology, and Criminal Justice, and an Associate Professor of Sociology. She has facilitated university service learning projects, community-based youth programs, and international learning initiatives, and is the founder of Help Bridge, an organization that specializes in leadership and social justice education. Chiquita, welcome to Upstream Downstream. It's great to have you.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Let's start with this sort of more broad question, but what are some of the challenges that come with leading a diverse group of people?
I think one of the greatest challenges that we have is pretty much balancing what we call internal and external assets, and some sociological theorists call them inequalities. So internally, as an individual, I have a certain degree of power, and I have the ability to compete, or I have the ability to act. And with my power, I'm able to interact or communicate with people in a certain way. So when someone sees me coming and they know me, they understand who I am as an individual, I also have to know what degree of power I have when I bring it into the room. So to a certain degree, if I carry a certain amount of power with me, when I'm interacting with another person, I might offend them with my words, or I might make them feel a certain way when I communicate. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand that you can't treat everybody the same, that there's a certain degree of energy and proximity with face and tone and all of these things that you manage when you communicate with individuals. So, of course, if we don't know somebody, or if we're getting to know somebody, we kind of navigate through those things. But then the external is also the reality that history has created a series of stereotypes about how people expect me to behave based upon my race, or my gender, or sexuality, or my income, or the community I grew up in, so on and so forth. So there are a series of stereotypes that also dictate how people take me in when I begin to communicate. So there's that relationship, like I said, between your internal and external assets. And so sometimes when the stereotypes are negative, even if someone's a dynamite human being or individual, they have to deal with the reality that another person may be interpreting them using some ideologies that don't fit them, as a person.
But we live today in an era where stereotypes are constantly being challenged. If you're in a leadership position, how do you keep up with those changes and deal with those changes, because people still have their stereotypes?
Well, I think one thing that I've been talking about on and on again are civility practices and civility measures, that you deal with people and you handle them with care by engaging in conversation in a way that you respect individuals and human beings. So even if there's a stereotype that might bring you to treat someone differently, and you need to revisit or learn something so that you can treat people better, if you walk into the situation saying this is a human being of whom I'm going to treat with respect and kindness, then you may run away from saying something that would be negative or something that would adversely affect somebody's success. That would be based upon a stereotype.
So what are some of the skills and strategies that leaders use to maintain civility, especially when tensions in a group might be running high?
I think it's a good thing to be able to listen and to understand where people are coming from, and then to ask questions. I find that if I'm interacting with someone and they're saying something and it bothers me, whatever it is that they're saying, I want to ask for more clarity. I want to get a really clear understanding about what it is that I don't agree with so that I can see if there's a consensus or something that I can come to, so I can see if there is a way that we can communicate or negotiate without me first responding using anger or some type of rash remark or something like that to the individual. I have a goal of identifying a mutual understanding. I have a goal of respecting the person so that I can, really look at what it is that they're saying from a positive perspective or a positive standpoint. So I don't walk in being negative if I don't agree with someone.
I have a feeling that while all of that sounds really good in theory, that when put into practice, it's kind of hard work though, isn't it? I mean, people have their own biases and they have their difference of opinions, and you're in a leadership position knowing that takes some work, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and it's not supposed to be easy, because if it were easy, then everybody would be a leader. And everybody's not a leader. A lot of people think they are leaders, but everybody is not ready or prepared to be a leader. And it takes learning and practice and I think emotional intelligence, I think. And I've talked many times about emotional capital building, meaning that if you have a group of people around you who are empathetic and kind and respectful toward other people, then you all are working towards similar goal, which is health and wellness, hopefully. So we hope that the people who we're working with want a story at the end, but we have to figure out what that means for everyone. And, disrespecting someone, calling someone a name, connecting or relating someone with something that is absolutely horrible before you get a chance to communicate with them and talk to them, where you position people in the starting line of the race really makes a difference. So if you've introduced someone in some type of horrible way, or if you have some type of negative standpoint for someone, before you even begin to communicate with them, then that's going to affect how hard they have to work when they're talking to you.
Well, we've heard the term, and everyone's heard the term, he or she is a born leader. I'm not so sure that's true. You can tell me one way or the other, but how can we grow and become better leaders? You mentioned being a good listener is a start, but especially when our groups that we're leading have different expectations of what a leader should be.
I think one thing that I think is really important is history. And some people, maybe perhaps are not engaged in particular histories because maybe those histories don't relate directly to their vision or their mission. But sometimes if you listen to the story from the perspective of the people you have to interact with or communicate with on a regular basis, you really grow and learn and see how people can look at things through different lenses. And I think also if we believe that our lens is the perfect lens or the only lens, then that doesn't help us to see eye to eye with anyone. So in sociology, they call them social facts. This is the reality that I could look at something and say my lens is a sunglass lens and another person's lens is a bifocal lens. If we're both looking at something, there's going to be that picture that we're seeing is going to be very different. And so if I claim that my sunglass lens is the only way of seeing it or the only way that it would be right, then it's going to be very difficult for me to really work with other people. And so folks who believe that there's only one way to get to the end of the street, that's usually a challenge with being a leader, especially when leadership means that you have to incorporate diverse perspectives and ideas. If there's only one way to do it, you're probably a couple people are going to drop off the platform when working with you.
So a leader, then, what I hear you saying, might be one who sets some goals. You know where you want to get to, but you're open to different ways of getting there.
And also open to understanding that it's not your way or the highway. I think when sometimes a leader says, my way is the only way of getting there, then the end result is only as big as that leader. And so you're not incorporating the values and ideologies and ideas of the other amazing people who you have working with you. You're only allowing them to do the best that they can using the platform that you've created.
I would imagine then a good leader is someone who has people who want to follow them. They're not being forced to follow them, but they want to follow them.
I think a good leader is a leader and a follower. It's not always only about having a group of people who will follow your every move, but it's also about being able to understand what a collective vision can be. So a lot of times, especially if I'm working on a team, I'm excited to work with people who have polarized perspectives because I'd like to see what the best decision is from both groups and see how we can put those both together and create a great outcome from that. And in some areas, it may not highlight everything that one person wanted or something that another person wanted. But at the end of the day, when you look at the story, a little piece of everyone's vision will be a part of that journey.
That is so well said. Is there anyone who comes to mind in the public arena who we might all know about who models the qualities of a good leader that you could mention?
It's a specific person. I think we all need a little help and work here.
We could say Martin Luther King was a great leader. One might say Ronald Reagan was a great leader. Okay.
Yeah, I think there are many leaders in our past and upcoming leaders in the future who have grabbed pieces of this, but a lot of times people are not able to lead in the way that I explained because this leadership model has to be accepted by the public as well. So you can try to lead with this model, but you may have people who have extremely polarized views who won't allow a person who will accept difference to actually pave the way.
You're listening to Upstream Downstream on WSHC-FM, sponsored by the Stubblefield Institute for Civil Political Communications at Shepherd University. We are talking with Dr. Chiquita Howard-Bostic about the unique qualities of a leader in a diverging world. One of the downsides of leaders is that they're human, and humans make mistakes. How can leaders learn from their failings as opposed to brushing them off?
I think reflection time is really important. A lot of times leaders are so busy that we may take the time to reflect upon the positive outcomes because these are the things that people champion you for. A lot of times when someone wants to speak with you or communicate with you, especially in public, they'll talk to you about something that you've done really well. But unless they're trying to attack you, they won't really focus on some things that could have been done better. So a lot of times when I have a mistake, something that I think I should do better, I write it down. And then I take the time to list the pros and cons of how that played out and think about what I can do differently, because a lot of times we learn more from our errors or our failures than we do from the things that we do well, because doing something well, you just think, oh, wow, this is great. I should just repeat this. Whereas when you don't do something correctly, there's so many different ways that it impacts your relationship with others as well as how you think of yourself. So really focusing on those errors and really looking through those and thinking about those and forgiving yourself and perhaps asking for forgiveness of those people who you offended or adversely impacted, that's the first step. And I think you just utilize those things as building blocks so that you could do better another time. A lot of people make the same mistakes over and over again, and they interact with people that I guess perpetuate those same types of ideas. So it's also important to think about, I use this phrase all the time, who's carrying your mattress? And that you have people around you who elevate you and people around you who help you to make sound decisions, accountability partners, as opposed to people who are trying to steal money from underneath your mattress or kick it or, spill things that you don't want on your mattress.
Sometimes I think people confuse leadership when they adopt. They think it's leadership, but what they're really being is using their power in a kind of a bullying kind of way. And I don't think that's real leadership, is it?
I think sometimes when you're a leader, you have to use fear tactic for some people, but you have to understand how to balance that. Some people need to be disciplined. They really do. Because some people don't make good choices and they don't listen otherwise. However, no matter what you're doing as a leader, you need to be balanced and you need to think about the consequences of whatever it is. I don't think it's okay to be a bully, but I do think it's okay to utilize your power to discipline people for things that they should not be doing.
Why am I thinking of my mother as you say that?
Well, mothers have the ability to discipline, but they also have a degree of respect. And when people are able to balance their use of fear with their leadership and also not overusing their power in ways that disrespect people, I think fear tactics don't look the same. So I think there's a way to utilize a fear tactic. And I think most people know what bullying is and what it means.
But in saying that too, you also understand that some people are more passionate about issues, let's say, than others. How can those in leadership positions stop their emotions from getting the better of them?
I think anything that people do, I think it's going to be emotionally or spiritually driven. Whatever words you tend to use, it's up to you. What I mean by this is that I don't believe there's a separation between church and state. I think anytime we make a decision, we're going to have values that drive why we think something is right or wrong. How we choose to communicate about that would then determine whether there's a separation between your emotions and your final outcome. You have to decide, you have to make the decision whether something is good or bad, whether it is the right. Some people do what they think is right, and then they know the difference between what they should do and what they ought to do. And so I think, again, emotional intelligence is really important there. I don't think people should act without emotions. I don't think that's the right thing to do. But I think we need to have our implicit biases in check, and we need to understand how to articulate our ideas in ways that are not designed to hurt people, but instead to solve the problem. And sometimes people get their feelings hurt when they don't like what it is that you have to do. And you do have to stand your ground. You're not going to make everybody happy. Leaders have to understand that. When you make a decision and you weigh everything out, you're not going to make a decision where every single person is happy. Every single person is not going to be happy with what I'm saying right now. I'm okay with that. Leaders have to be okay with that too.
And you understand, probably more than most, that words, as they say, really do matter. So how can leaders learn to be more tactful when dealing with difficult conversations and avoid inciting antagonism?
I think it takes practice. It takes lots of practice to be able to know what right words to use. And also, like I said, going back to the history and then understanding how certain words impact a variety of different groups. You have to know your audience. You can't say the same things to everybody. And that may seem, I guess, the word that some people use historically, corny, to pick and choose your language and not say the exact same thing to everybody. But you really have to think about how your words will impact a particular audience that you're communicating with. So there are many different ways to say the same thing. People have to understand that.
One of the ways that I gauge someone who I would admire, and probably in a leadership role, would be their genuineness. Are they coming across in a genuine kind of way? So there's no one way to be a leader. There's many ways to be a leader. You use your own personality for that. But how important is being genuine?
I align the word genuine with people calling someone a liar as the opposite. Is that what you're asking me? When someone says, are you genuine? That means that you're not being fake. Is that correct?
I would think that no, for me asking the question would be, do I have a feel about that person that they're being themselves? They're not trying, I guess maybe being fake, but they're not trying to be someone that they're not. They're just who they are. I sense that from you, actually, as someone who is just letting it all out there. This is who you are. You're genuine.
Mm-hmm. I think every day I learn more about who I am. And so the question of being genuine or being transparent, I think those align, because it's a journey. Even moving into this new position that I have as Associate Vice President at Shepherd, there are different ways that I've had to communicate things as a department chair than I would as an Associate Vice President. And so as you move through these different identities, you have to really understand what type of persona you want to project to other people, and you have to be okay with that. And I think once you're okay with that, you can speak in that particular voice. But I mean, everybody is growing every day, hopefully in some type of way. As you meet new people and talk to new people, you're learning. And so I don't expect an individual. First of all, I don't expect someone to be me. So being genuine doesn't mean that you're saying something only in the ways that I would take them in as being great or good or bad. And also being genuine doesn't mean that you can't change your mind. You know, you can't believe something differently tomorrow than what you believed in yesterday, but that you're just honest about it.
It's always beneficial to have a team of people a leader can rely on, I would imagine. But how can a leader make sure that that team doesn't incidentally share the exact same views? You, as a leader, or anyone as a leader, I would think needs to be around them or have around them someone that they can bounce their ideas off or bounce their opinions off of and know that they're getting an honest response.
Honestly, I prioritize people in my life. And there are people who are closer with me and to me than other people are. So I have groups of people, a variety of different people who look at things from different perspectives and who see the world in different ways. And I have them all around me. But every single person, whether they have differential views or not, they're not in my inner circle. And so I think as a leader, you have to protect yourself, and you have to make sure that you have people around you who will not stab you. Like I said, the people who will carry your mattress. Some of those people may have different views than you do, and some of them may not. It's always good to be able to bounce ideas, with different people, but that doesn't mean that those people have to be your best friends. So, I mean, I think people should be mindful of who they have closest to them and make sure that those individuals will be safe people to have around. And it's wonderful if those people happen to look at things from different perspectives. But I think it's good to have a community of people who see the world differently, where you decide what information is relevant to share with that particular person. You don't have to share every single idea that you have with every single individual. You have to be mindful that we're all very different. In sociology, that's social differentiation. And one person that believes in the same race ideologies that you do may not believe in the same gender ideologies or constructions that you do. So you just have to understand your audience, like I said, and be mindful about who you decide to share your inner thoughts with, and make sure that the people you have closest to you really do want you to win, and to make sure that they help you to represent that well.
When we move this discussion of leadership from one level out to the public level, we, of course, then begin to look at public figures who have power, elected officials, whether they be a city council person or president of the United States. We live today in a very divided nation. Americans seem to be asking, where's this next leader? Where's our next John Kennedy, or where's our next Ronald Reagan? There doesn't seem to be one all of a sudden appearing before us. What should we be looking for in a leader in the public arena these days?
So what I see historically, to me, is that, and I can use Karl Marx's term, these terms, modes of production, that every time there's a new mode of production shift, like as we move from hunting and gathering to agriculture, to industry, to technology, to global technology, the types of communication strategies that we use and the types of issues that we have to deal with become more complex, and they involve more ideology. And so it is absolutely unfair to ask for Dr. Martin Luther King in 2021, because Martin Luther King didn't have to deal with global capitalism and the number of issues dealing with specific people and ideologies. But we do need a collection of leaders who can understand institutions, like leaders who can understand the economy and how they impact people, political leaders that understand some about politics and some about global relations, but who can bounce ideas off of the religious or spiritual leaders. I do understand that a leader needs to have a little bit of everything involved, but there can't be an interpretation in society right now, in my opinion, that expects one perfect leader to come along and to be able to drive the world. But I do believe that people can take particular entities and work effectively together. I think teamwork is more important than anything right now. Looking for someone to be able to navigate the entire world right now is like utopia to me, a leadership utopia. But like I said, there are certain qualities like the ones that we're talking about, the ones that I introduced in that keynote speech for the Herbert Henderson presentation about fierce leaders, people who understand emotional intelligence, people who understand the elements of civility and people who can work alongside folks with polarized perspectives and try to see how we can get as far as we can. Working in silos is just not effective, but finding one person to do it all is just unfair to me. Because when you start taking current leaders and you start comparing them in that way, when the issues that they have to deal with are a lot more complex, then it's like comparing apples and oranges.
Let me end our time with this question, as self-serving as it might seem. Our mission at the Stubblefield Institute for Civil Political Communications is to promote civil communications and constructive debate in the political world. Sometimes I believe we've taken on an impossible task. Do you have hope that our divergent nation can once again learn to value civility?
The word "once again" is very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
I'm not really sure that we've tackled that at all. I believe we have a lot of work to do. I think we'll continue to work.
Do you mind if I take that part of the question back then?
I think it's fair to keep it in because there are people in society who believe that there were points in time where we were wholly civil, and that we need to get back to that point. But I'm going to just say that it depends on the perspective and who's talking and how they see the world. I think we've had very great moments, and I think that there are some things that need to have do-overs so that we can get back to that particular point, but we still need to grow. We need to just continue to grow and try to understand the word that I use is human capital transmission. We need to understand that everybody, all of these people that we deal with, that they are human beings with the capability and capacity to be great. And so when we start ranking and grading cultures and people and putting them into boxes that dehumanize them, then we move further and further away from civility. So the sooner we can respect all people as functional, rational human beings, I think we'll move closer and closer to civility.
Chiquita, thank you for joining us today. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. I want to thank you so much for being our guest, and also thank, as always, you, our listeners, for tuning into our program. I'd also like to thank our producer, Sarah Burke, and our associate producer and editor, Bianca Eisen. Until next week, I'm David Welch.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Upstream Downstream, presented by the Stubblefield Institute for Civil Political Communications at Shepherd University. To learn more about the Stubblefield Institute or to become a friend of the Institute, please go online to stubblefieldinstitute.org.